Hello, everyone, and welcome to this first Scopus webinar, part of a series. We'll get started in a few minutes, so I just want to wait a few more minutes because we see that there are still people joining. So we'll start in 2 or 3 minutes. Okay, well, we'll get started now. I hope that everyone can hear my voice. Derek, maybe you can confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can confirm that.
That's great. Then I'm not talking to myself. That's a good start. So everyone, welcome to this first Scopus webinar, which will focus on Scopus search and results. It's the first webinar in a series which we've planned of virtual webinars in the next few months. We thank you for taking the time to join us. I know there's been a lot of webinars that have been planned. Certainly, that's my experience, and I'm glad to see that so many people showed up here today. We hope that everyone is well and healthy, that everyone's family is well. I present to you from my home in Singapore, but this webinar is attended from people throughout Southeast Asia and South Asia. We will record this session and make the recording available to you by sending a link after the session is over. And I will do my best to keep the webinar, quite short and simple to leave enough questions. So if you have questions, the way to do that is to ask through the Q&A function in Zoom. And at the second half of the session, I will focus on answering those questions. So the series that we've planned covers a number of topics, where today is a bit of an introduction, where we're focusing really on a simple aspect, which is Scopus is a search engine and looking through the results. But we're also in the coming weeks going to cover how content is selected for Scopus, how profiling works, how author profiles are created, and how you can manage your own profile, how to analyze journals in Scopus. We'll run you through the different types of metrics there are in Scopus and what you can and can't do with them. We'll also look at institutional profiles. We'll look at advanced searching, which is, some people find this difficult, but we'll look into making that a little bit less difficult for you. Search alerts, as well as funding acknowledgements. So whichever of these topics interest you, you can sign up for those specific webinars. Today, I'm joined by Derek Duncombe, who's Marketing Development Manager at Elsevier, also based in Singapore. I'm Alexander van Tervellen. While I'm originally from the Netherlands, I've been living in Singapore, serving customers in Southeast Asia for a bit more than 7 years. Both Derek and I work closely and are happy to answer any questions which you have after the webinar that maybe weren't addressed here. Feel free to email us, and we'll do our best to get back to you. I'm going to try to run a poll and see who are the people that are here. So if this is working, you should see a window. Oh, and I see people are answering already. So let's give a couple minutes here, or 1 minute to see. So I see that so far there look to be a lot of PhD students and researchers and librarians that are here, which makes sense. Those are, I think, the type of audience that already uses Scopus or could use Scopus. So the poll's been open for almost 40 seconds. We'll give it 10 more seconds. 5 more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close the poll. So now we can see that the largest share of people that are attending this webinar are researchers, but also a high percentage of PhD students. And to the librarians, of course, hello. We work with you as well. So anyway, welcome to this webinar. And because it's a bit of a introduction, we'll start with very basically looking at what Scopus is. I know that most of you probably already know what Scopus is, but for those of you that don't, it's Elsevier's abstract and citation database, which includes content from over 5,000 publishers. So it's about 24,000 peer-reviewed journals. They come from 5,000 publishers in 105 different countries. It covers journals which are in 40 different languages. Scopus is updated every day. It covers almost 9 million open access documents. So if that's important to you, you can access open access journals and documents in Scopus. It includes both journals, conferences, and books, and we're constantly expanding the content that's in Scopus. Scopus is a curated data set, so we put a lot of work into selecting the content to ensure that all of it is genuine, peer-reviewed science, right? So the process by which we select content, I'll be presenting in the next webinar in 2 weeks. But it's important to realize that the difference between looking things up in Scopus and in, let's say, just on the internet is that the content that you find in Scopus is peer-reviewed, genuine, high-quality science, where in this day and time, it's sometimes questionable when you find things just online. Sometimes things that look relatively reputable can turn out to be not quite what they are pretending to be. The typical use cases that Scopus is used for, starting with librarians, or starting with researchers. Researchers can use it, of course, to find and read papers, but also to track their own research performance using the profiles. They can look at themselves, look at their own research performance, compare themselves to others. They can keep up to date in their own field by looking at the latest papers which are being published. They can find other people to collaborate with, so they can identify who are the key players in very specific areas, either to identify the competitors or to reach out to someone to work together with. They can identify which journals they should be publishing in, and that's stuff which we will look at in detail. For librarians, Scopus is really a resource to have the library provide to all of the relevant stakeholders within a university to help them with their workflows and increase the efficiency and impact of how a research system does research. It helps to ensure the quality of their own internal systems. So if they have a research management system or a repository, they can use Scopus to feed the high quality enriched data from Scopus into the systems. So that's how Scopus serves libraries. But Scopus is also used by research offices or policymakers, vice president of research or vice rector, to look at a high level at the research performance of their university and try and see, are they moving forward? It can be used to evaluate researchers, to look at individuals, to set KPIs and measure progress towards those KPIs, and to understand the research landscape. Um, these are general use cases. Sometimes they don't do justice to the very specific ways in that a lot of people use Scopus. So that's something that um, I hope to cover in a bit more detail in this webinar series, to look at the very specific things you can do in Scopus, which might not be obvious from just looking at this list here. If you want to keep up to date with Scopus, so one of the best ways to do that is to go to the blog. There is a Scopus blog which provides a lot of updates and a lot of links to interesting information related to research. So if you haven't gone to Scopus blog and after this you're say interested to know a bit more about Scopus and how you can use it to do the many things that you need to do, please visit the Scopus blog. For those of you that like Twitter, I personally don't really tweet, so I don't go there, but there is a Scopus Twitter account which is also publishing interesting information. In terms of resources, we also have the Elsevier Research Academy, which is this free online platform that provides a lot of education for researchers. So we saw that there's a lot of PhDs and researchers on this call. So if you go to the Researcher Academy, you can sign in and go through these learning modules to really look at some of the key things that researchers we need to be able to do to publish papers and those kinds of things. So have a look there. I think it's self-explanatory when you go to the website. We also have Library Connect, which is a global program that is publishing a lot of newsletters and content and webinars. I think it's a great resource for libraries. I think also the best way to explore that is just to go there and have a look. Lastly, and certainly not least, Elsevier has recently created an Elsevier COVID-19 like resource hub, and this is really providing a lot of information, including making access to certain products and information free and available to people who are working in the field of trying to find treatment and vaccine for COVID-19. So there's an easy way to go to this resources, just to go to covid19.elsevier.health and browse through it yourself and see what's there. So those are the resources which we wanted to point out in the beginning. So let's have a look at Scopus finally. But before I do that, I'm going to try to run another poll and ask you how often you actually use. So how do I close this poll? All right, there we go. So before I go and start demonstrating parts of Scopus and showing you this is what I do, if you could share how often you use Scopus, be honest, then I can kind of cater to the experience of the audience. Okay, I'm going to leave it open for another 15 seconds, the poll. Okay, I'm going to end the poll now. It was 1 minute, and share the results. And the results is that most of you, 46% of you use Scopus sometimes, but not often. I think there's 9% have never used it, but also 9% say I use Scopus every day. So thank you if you use Scopus every day. But if you don't use Scopus often, I'm interested to know why. And I'm going to focus again, this is a first training in which we're covering quite basic things like how to search and what you can see in the search results. But in some of the other webinars, we're going into more depth into this. So without further ado, I'm going to go into Scopus itself. So Derek, can you see the Scopus screen?
Yes, I can.
Great. So you might recognize this if you use Scopus. The way to go to Scopus is you go to www.scopus.com. And you can log in within the IP of your university if they subscribe. And the home page it comes to is the document search page. So because one of the key things that we do in Scopus is search for things, right? You can see that you can search for a number of different things: documents, authors, affiliations, and advanced search. So that's the first thing. Documents would be the many scientific papers which are published in peer-reviewed journals, conferences, and books. Authors, you would be searching for author profiles, so individuals which each have a profile in Scopus. Affiliations, these would be the many institutions that produce research, like universities, research institutes, medical institutions, as well as governmental institutions. Also, each one has a profile in Scopus so that you can look at that and link from either the institution or from the author through to look at all of their papers. In the advanced search, which is something that we'll cover in later in the course, you can do very complex searches, but let's start with the basics. If we go to the top here, we can see that we're now in the search page, but you can also look at the complete list of journals which are in Scopus. So that would be the complete list of all of the peer-reviewed journals, conferences, and books. Here you can see lists which you've saved. You can link to SciVal. You can link to your library's own catalog. I can't do that. I'm not in a library. And on the right here, there's some interesting things, because if I click here, I can see that this is my account for Scopus. You can see my name. But I've logged into Scopus, and I know that not everyone logs into Scopus when they use it. In fact, I think most people don't. And the good thing about logging into Scopus is that you can save your searches, you can set up alerts, you can save lists, and you can really customize the way that Scopus works so that it fits with what you're trying to do. So we really recommend, if you use Scopus regularly, why not, create your login and log in. And I'll show you some of the things which make it worth doing. At the bottom here, we have some kind of like information resources. Scopus is actually available in Japanese, Chinese, and Russian next to English, but because I don't speak those languages, I'll keep it in English. Customer service, if you have an issue, a query, you can provide that to our customer service via an online form here. You can also participate in a program to improve Scopus by providing feedback, which you can link through to by here. So that's the kind of search interface. So let's search for something. So I want to search for tacit knowledge, which is something that I searched for when I was doing my research master in the Netherlands. And I'm using a phrased search. I'm using quotation marks because I want tacit and knowledge to be next to each other as a phrase. I don't want tacit to be in the title and knowledge to be in the abstract, for example, right? Whenever you do search, you need to think about which field are you searching in. So by default, it's in the abstract title and keywords, but you could search in all fields. You could search for just the author names. You could search for city names, country names. You could search for, through references. So again, Scopus can be from a basic tool to a very advanced tool, depending on what you need to do. But you can search in all these different fields. You can also combine, make your search more complex by, let's say, looking at tacit knowledge and something or something and not. So all of your Boolean operators, you can use that way. And you can limit. So here we can limit and say, well, I actually want to look at papers which were published after the year 2000. So that's mind-blowingly 20 years ago already. And if you were looking for very up-to-date content, you could, for example, say, well, I just want to have the papers which were published in the last 7 days. If you wanted to look only at open access papers, you could use that filter to do that here. But I would like to start out broad and do this search. So here I found almost 6,000 documents which have the phrase tacit knowledge either in the title, abstract, or keywords, published after 1999. So whenever we do a search in Scopus, we can see the actual search string here, right? So that's a good thing because you can save your search, you can set an alert, you can edit your search by going back and refining it. But at least this way you can see what your search was. There's also a search history. So if I go back to the previous page, you can see that today I searched for these 2 searches. So instead of repeating the search, if I wanted to just link through to that search again, I could do that very simply. Looking at the results, we can see here, I'm looking at the documents. You can also look at the actual references which are in those documents which are not covered by Scopus. Those are secondary documents. You can also look at related patents which are citing the papers here. We can do many things with a list of results. So I think first of all is in which order are we looking at the results? So I tend to look in order of recency. So I like to look at the most recent papers because this is a field which I did research in, I've published in. So I want to look at the most recent papers. But a lot of people would like to look at the most highly cited papers at the top because they're looking to identify the high impact papers and focus on those. So here we see the list which is ranked by citations. Now on the left we have all kinds of options for limiting down our results, right? So we can limit by year, access type, we can limit by subject area. So for example, I'm particularly interested in psychology and social sciences aspects of tacit knowledge. So I might, limit down to those subject areas. So I would just select those and limit here. So then you see we still have 1,829 documents. Here we can see the document types. So if I'm looking for original research articles, I might limit here. Or if I'm looking to read reviews, that was one of the ways when I was studying as well. I really want to learn the whole history of this field. So I started with reading review articles, but also books. You also have the affiliations and countries and languages. So if I wanted to, for example, filter out non-English articles, I could focus on English. And let's say I want to focus only on open access, I could focus on open access and limit there. So now I have 142 open access documents related to tacit knowledge, and you can see that my search string here reflects all of those refinements that I've made. So I see that social sciences and psychology limited, open access, and English. So again, if I want to save that search and run it again later, I don't need to think through the steps. You know, what did I do to get there? I can just save it and come back to it later. But now that we have results, you know, what are we going to do with them? There's a number of things you can do. We can look at the abstract of a paper, right? So if I'm thinking, is this a paper I want to download or look at? Maybe the first thing is I want to look at the abstract. You could look at all the abstracts by using this button here. Um, if you want to click through to the publisher where you can view the full text, there's two options, usually view it full text button and the view it publisher button. We'll link you through to the publisher page where that document is stored, where you can see the full text, because these are all open access documents because I use the open access filter there. You can export or download or save this content to a list. So in terms of exporting, you can export to a reference manager, you can export to an Excel sheet, or you can export to plain text. So for example, if I select these 142 documents and want to export them to plain text, and I want to include these fields, including the funding details, it will then, you know, neatly export this content into a list. So that's pretty easy to do. But I would say as a researcher, I wasn't really into exporting stuff. I was more into finding papers that were going to be really interesting for me. So I would link through to the actual paper. And when we link through to a paper, we refer to this as the documents page. And on the document page, you can see a lot of things about the actual paper. So here we see the title of the paper. We can see the authors. And importantly, each of these authors has profiles. So if I like this paper and I say, hey, I want to read all the papers that were published by R.L. Cruz, I can just click on this button here, and it's going to take me to the author profile of this person, and I can see their whole publication list. So this is one of the ways in which I would find, you know, interesting papers to read that are not based directly on a search, but by starting with a search, identifying some key authors, and then linking from the authors through to their papers. But let's go back one step. I can see that these authors are affiliated to McGill University Faculty of Medicine in Montreal, Canada. This metrics box tells us something about the impact of the paper. We're going to do a deep dive into metrics in the later sessions, but you can see that this paper has been cited 187 times, which is 13 times world average. And if we wanted to, we can link through to the 187 actual papers which are citing this paper. So if you wanted to analyze the citing documents, that's pretty easy to do. You can link through to them here. You can find related documents. So instead of doing a search yourself, Scopus will help you to find papers which show similarity to the current paper that you're looking at. Here you see the abstract, which should give you an idea of, is the paper relevant to me? We see that it is related to a topic which is students and medical professionalism, and that it's a relatively prominent topic globally. So this shows that the topic is relatively highly cited, highly viewed, and being published in high quality journals. So prominence suggests that there's momentum in this topic and probably funding available. In addition to the author keywords, we see the indexed keywords that are using subject-specific thesauri like Emtree and Mesh, where we can see in detail the keywords or topics that this paper is related to. And at the bottom, we can kind of see more information. Like this is published in a journal. It's in English. You have the PubMed ID because it's also, this particular paper is also in PubMed. So if you wanted to see it there, you could use this ID. It's actually a review article. So like I was saying before, sometimes it's great to read review articles to learn everything you can about a field. So all of that information is here. But you can also look at the papers which these authors have cited in their work by looking through their references. So here they've been citing themselves, but you could link through to the references to read the paper that they're citing. So that's another way to find other papers. So let's see what time it is. We're about halfway through the webinar. And I think these are some of the basics of searching is, again, to use the document search and to set up your what you're looking for. So if I wanted to do something a bit more complicated and look at tacit knowledge and intelligence, then I could do that. And if I wanted to limit it to papers that were published in the last 4 years, because I spelled intelligence completely wrong. So let's edit that. So again, the steps are kind of to think of what you're searching for, use your keywords, see if it's a phrase search, limit to what you're looking for. So for me, it was by subject area to psychology and social sciences. You have all these filters on the left. And I guess instead of me thinking more about what I can show you, because this is meant to be a very simple introductory training, I think we can open up the floor and see if there are any questions. So Derek, are there questions which you would like to read out for me?
Yes, a couple of questions which I think, so the first one here is, can I create a Scopus account using 2 email addresses, that is my work and school emails, so that my publications can be together irrespective of the affiliation?
You can create accounts, but creating your account has no bearing as to your profile in Scopus. So the profiles are created based on the affiliation information that's in papers which are published. So it's not something that the authors do themselves. It's not something that is based on authors creating their profile in Scopus. If you create a profile in Scopus, it's really for you as a user to create a profile so that you can see your search history and that kind of thing. To have a profile of your papers in Scopus is a different thing. And again, that is done at first algorithmically. So we identify the papers that belong to a particular individual based on information in that paper, like the name and the affiliation information. Those profiles you can provide feedback on. So if your profile is incomplete or you wish to make changes, you can actually go into Scopus and do that. And it's something that we will show in, I think it's webinar 3 or 4.
Great, thanks, Alexander. The second question is, when will we get Arabic citation index, Arabic Scopus H index? Is Elsevier planning for that in the future?
I'm not sure what that is. So a citation index for Arabic, do you mean Arabic journals in Scopus or?
No, that's the nature of the question. Yeah. So please.
So Yeah, I mean, Derek, you would know a little bit about that.
Yeah.
If the question is about getting Arabic content into Scopus, we do work with a lot of local citation indexes to get um, to help them to prepare to go through the evaluation process. I would have to speak to my colleagues in the Middle East to look at what is being done with Arabic citation indexes at this point. I'm not aware of the latest developments there.
Those are all the questions for now.
Okay. I see a lot of questions here in the chat. So here's one. Hi, can we get the recording of the training after? Yes. So we will send a recording of this training through to all the participants after. The question is how to get the paper that is not open access. I found so many papers that I need to pay. The best way is to be part of a university whose library subscribes to the many collections that there are from the biggest publishers. So the best way is really to be at a university that has invested in the resources, so that when you link from Scopus to a paper that's not open access, you would just get access once you link out. If you're at home, it's a little bit trickier. Then you have to really look at what papers are out there. I think that more and more there are a lot of open access papers, but I understand the frustration sometimes if you hit a paywall.
Another one is Scopus only scans through search keywords in the title, abstract, and related keywords, unlike Google Scholar that would scan through the text body. Is this correct?
No, I don't think that's correct, because even in Google and Scopus alike, we have not indexed the full text of the article in a lot of cases. Especially if it's behind a paywall, then Google wouldn't be able to access that. So I think Google might index the full text of open access, and Scopus would not. So that they're correct in that. But I also think that Scopus has an advantage of having the kind of data enrichment process and indexed keywords and a lot more options to search and find articles via institutions and via authors and via journals. So there's a lot more routes to find the content in Scopus than in Google, which I think probably compensate for the point that they're making is valid, that some open access content, likely the full text, would be indexed in Google. So that's true.
Next question. How different is Scopus from IEEE? Or both have same contents? Or Scopus more advanced and has more content than IEEE?
IEEE is a publisher that has certain content, and I think all of that content in Scopus. So actually, let me go to sources. So if you press here on the sources page, you will be able to look through all of the content that's in Scopus. So you could either look by subject area, you can look at by publisher. So here you can see that there's 328 IEEE, I think, conferences and different content that's in Scopus. So Scopus is incredibly comprehensive. The content that we have is really covering all of the major publishers, but also many smaller publishers. It's including conference proceedings, books. So it's much more than IEEE, but does include all of the IEEE content, as you can see here. But if for those of you that are interested in looking at what content is in Scopus, the place to go is here, sources, and you can either search by subject area or by publisher. So if I wanted to look at what Elsevier stuff is there, but you could equally look at what Springer content is in Scopus. So I hope that will help to answer the question.
Thanks, Sander. Next question. Most Scopus papers do not allow full text access, just abstracts. How do I access the full text papers?
Yep. So let me show you again. So if we do the search for tacit knowledge and intelligence, and so yes, we at first see only the title and abstract and stuff. But let's say I want to go through to the full text, and because I'm at home, I don't have access to any of the publishers. I'm using open access. So if I wanted to go through to this paper, let's say that I look here and I'm interested, I can use this full text button here. And it taking me to Science Direct, where I have access to, I can download the full text here because it's an open access paper. So there would be no paywall. You can see here open access, right? So you could read the whole paper either here in Science Direct, or you could just download the PDF. Okay.
Thanks, Sander. Next question. Is there a significant difference between Scopus and Web of Science search results?
Ooh, that's a tough question. Fair question. I don't know. I don't use Web of Science, so it's a similar concept in that it's an abstract and citation database. I think that their content is different than ours, so probably if you do the same search, you will get overlap, but you also get differences. Think off the top of my head, if you're looking at Web of Science, their core collection, which is what most often is referred to as Web of Science, I believe is 12 or 13,000 journals. Scopus is 24,000 journals. So I think if you do the same search in Scopus or Web of Science, you would be likely to find more papers in Scopus, but the search results would include all or at least most of the papers that are in Web of Science. So I think that's the key difference in terms of search would be the actual content that's indexed in the databases.
Thanks, Sander. Next question. Hi, how can we get to the document search page, same as yours, the one that you presented earlier? Because for my friend and I, it only appears as author search. Thank you.
Okay, so you can search for different things here. So if you have author search on, you've probably selected this option here, but just to the left, there's a document button. So I think if you press that, you should get the same options that I have here. If it doesn't work, let us know. Send us an email. We'll try to help you out. But you really should have these options for searching for documents, authors, or affiliations.
Thanks, Sander. Next question. What's the difference between Scopus and Science Direct?
That's a good question. They are different. Science Direct is Elsevier's full text platform. So it has the full text for for all of the content that's there, and it's all Elsevier journals. So Elsevier is the biggest scientific publisher in the world with over 2,000 journals covering a lot of different subject areas. And since the age of digitalization, we moved all of that content into digital platforms so that people can search for the papers and download the full text and read them without needing to go, like when I was young, you had to actually go to the library and get on a shelf and get it. So the Science Direct is full text, but it's only Elsevier content, which is like 2,000 journals or so. Scopus is also built by the same company, Elsevier, but it includes the content not only of Elsevier publisher, but of all of the major publishers like Springer Nature, Wiley, all of the others. I forget all the names, but over 5,000 publishers, including small university press. So it's not just Elsevier's journals, but the journals of many, many other publishers. They get indexed in Scopus, but it does not include the full text. It includes information like the title, the authors, the citation counts, the references, and a lot of information you can use to find things and to analyze people and journals and such. But from Scopus, to get the full text, you would have to link from Scopus to the publisher, whether it's Elsevier or Springer or Wiley. You would have to link from Scopus to the publisher to get to the full text. So that's the key difference.
Thanks, Sander. Okay, so all of a sudden, the questions are coming fast and furious. So I'm going to pick up. I'm going to pick up.
You're gonna pick up the
questions.
pace, all right.
I'm going to pick up questions that I think are relevant to most people. Okay. Okay. So why is my Google Scholar Index different from my Scopus H Index?
That's a great question. So Scopus H Index for an author includes the papers of that author, which are published in the journals which are indexed in Scopus. So Scopus is a curated database where we carefully select which journals are included. So that would affect what content is in a given author's profile and what their H index is. Our author profiles and metrics like H index are used by universities, government funding bodies and agencies to identify authors who are good in leading in specific topics. They don't use Google so much because the Google profile of an individual includes any content which individual has published, including potentially stuff that they've published in predatory journals, or it could be homework that they did when they were in second grade. There is less quality control in Google than in Scopus. It's something that is really at the heart of what Elsevier does, which is to curate and ensure that all of the content is of the highest quality. While in Scopus, we've done what we try to do is find that right balance between comprehensiveness to really cover a lot of content, journals from many different countries, different languages, different fields, but also to ensure that everything that's indexed in Scopus is genuine peer-reviewed science and not predatory or lacking in quality.
Thanks, Sander. Next question. What is the difference between impact factor by Web of Science and SJR? Is the value for both similar?
That's a great question. So I'm going to go to sources and look at a journal. So impact factor is a metric that is used to measure the say quality or citedness of a journal. It's a metric that's created by Claravit Web of Science, and the metric which you mentioned, SJR, is a metric that's created by Schemago, which is a partner of Scopus. It's also a metric that measures the quality of a journal, but it works a little bit differently. The way that we do it, our view of using metrics is that usually there's no one metric that's perfect. Each metric has its weaknesses and its strengths. And therefore, we like to create or have a choice of different metrics that users can refer to understand the quality of a particular entity. So in this case, a journal. So therefore, every journal has 3 metrics in Scopus. One is called Cite Score, which is created by Elsevier itself, and I will talk about a lot more in one of the following webinars. The other 2 are SJR. So SJR is called Schemago Journal Rank, which is created by a partner. So it's not created by Elsevier, but created by a partner using Scopus data, again, to give this value on the impact or quality of a journal. And then you have source normalized impact per paper, which is another metric that measures the quality of a journal. So all 3 are based on the citedness of a journal, but the way that they work is a lot different. And I will cover exactly what the differences are between these three metrics, as well as how they differ from impact factor in one of the later webinars. It's a little bit too much to try and cover in a few sentences. So if it's important to you, please come back and sign up for that webinar as well.
Thanks, Ender. So on a related note, there's another question that came in. I would like to ask about Scopus quartile. Does Scopus quartile, is it the same as Schimago journal rank?
Quartile. So I think if you're referring to the journal quartile that you see in Schimago, we don't have those published in Scopus, but it is based on Scopus data. What we have here is quartiles which are based on site score, and we think it's very complicated if we're going to have quartiles based on many different metrics. So at the moment, we have quartiles which are based on the site score metric, and I know that Schimago has journal quartiles on its website. And yes, they do correspond to the data that's in Scopus because they are based on the papers and citations from Scopus, but we don't show the journal quartile for SJR in Scopus at the moment. Who knows if it might change in the future, but at the moment, the quartiles are really based on site score.
Thanks, Ender. Next question. How can I remove other authors in my account that I have same name with me? Try so many times, but still appear.
Right. So I think what the person is saying is that they have an author profile in Scopus and there's some other people who have the same name that are mixed in the profile. That is also one of those things that is not easy to just show you exactly step by step what to do in a couple sentences. I will cover it in the webinar that we have dedicated to author profiles, where I'll show you exactly how you can go into your profile and make any type of correction that you need to do. So to that person, please, sign up, and I hope that you have the time to come back then. But it's definitely possible. It's not that hard, and the changes are processed relatively quickly. So it takes, I think, within a week it would be fixed.
Thanks, Ender. Okay, next question. How soon will papers published by a publisher in a volume or issue get indexed in Scopus? There may be sometimes an issue whereby it's already published at publisher's website, but yet to be found in Scopus.
That's a good question. It's one we get more often. It really depends on the publisher. There are 5,000 publishers and 24,000 different journals which have a feed of content which is sending the latest content to Scopus. And sometimes the publishers, some of them are much quicker and have a much more regular feed than others. So what we notice is especially some of the smaller publishers, the feed is not quite as regular. So they might have put documents up on their homepage and not yet had them sent to Scopus. We have a kind of alarm set up to look at content which is late, and so we can proactively reach out to some of these publishers and say, hey, I think that you're late providing the latest content. So I think it's a fair thing to ask about, but the answer is it really depends on which publisher, and sometimes it's not on our end that that it's late arriving to Scopus. Sometimes I think it's the publisher that sends it a little bit later than when they're publishing it on their own website.
Thanks, Andrew. Next question. There are two questions that are very similar. So one is, can we check the journal quality in Scopus? For example, this journal belongs to Q1 or Q2. Then another question is something very similar. By using Scopus, is it possible to identify Q1, Q2 journals?
Yes, but you would be using site score. So if I wanted to look within the field of, and let's do something relevant to me. So if we wanted to look within developmental and educational psychology, and I wanted to target publishing in a second quartile journal, I can do second quartile limit, and then I'm going to see there's 77 journals which are quartile 2 using site score based on developmental psychology. And so these would be the ones where I would look at maybe targeting them for publishing in. Derek?
Sorry, I was just scrolling through the other questions.
No worries.
they're really coming fast and furious. So I'm trying to pick up questions which are relevant to most people here. So one other question is this: using Scopus search function, is there a way to search certain terms throughout the full text rather than just title, abstract, and keywords?
I think that's a similar question to what someone asked earlier, in that because Scopus doesn't cover the full text, it's not possible to search in the full text. But there are a lot of other benefits to finding papers in Scopus, because you can search using the actual index keywords. You can go look via the author, via the institution to find the paper. But the answer is no, you cannot search in the full text. Because the full text isn't in Scopus. So it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Okay, next question. I want to create bibliometric analysis article. I'm screening the article through advanced search, but the problem now, I have to read the title and article one by one to identify the journal for school. Any other way?
I'm not sure what you're trying to do. So it's hard for me to comment. If you're doing an analysis, there's different ways to to do it. If you're trying to limit to a particular journal, you could certainly do that within your search. If you want to identify things, instead of doing it in the screen, you could try exporting everything to Excel and then searching, or using a filter to limit to particular, limit fields to particular types of input. Those are some thoughts, but without knowing more on what you're trying to do, it's a bit hard to answer.
Okay, next, hang on, yeah.
So Derek, we have just 3 more minutes.
Yeah, so I'm just trying
I think
to
at this point we're going to start to
wrap it up already.
Round out the session or close it out. I think if people have questions about what they saw today, or other questions that weren't covered here, please email us. Please have a look at the overall schedule of the webinars that we have set up, because I think today was really a introduction that's very basic, looking at search and search results. Very encouraged to see that so many people came, and there's over 300 people came, and I think most of you stayed. So thanks for that. I hope it's helpful. Again, don't be afraid to reach out to Derek or I by email. And if you have, this is especially to the librarians, if you have topics which you don't see in our current schedule, which you would really like to see covered, please contact us. Maybe we can schedule in some additional sessions to cover those topics. So from Derek and I think we're going to sign off. You wanna say goodbye, Derek, to everyone?
Thanks for all the questions. Thanks for attending today's session. Goodbye, everyone.
All right, that was our first webinar. Thanks a lot for coming, and I hope to see you guys later. I'm gonna see if I can stop the recording and close the session, but stay well.
Just a reminder that it'll be sent. Just a reminder that it'll be sent around to all those who registered. Yeah, it'll be sent to your email addresses that you registered with.
Yes. All right. Again, see you guys later. Bye.